This is the Turnbull and Pipkin Show. It's episode 28. It is November 5th, 2020. And once again, if you hear a baby or chihuahua in the background, you're not going crazy. Um, it is just me and Jamie. Specifically, Jaya. Jaya's I'm rooting for us today in the background this morning. So you will hear her input, and maybe a couple roll tides here and there. Got a great show for you guys. Just excited just to be have a fun conversation about sports. Get away from all other conversations going around right now. Just have some fun. Have a hour of some fun. And as always, if you have any comments, any thoughts, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. It's cool that you can download our podcast through Google and Spotify right now.
Yes.
Also, the red button, our website there as well. You can download our podcast from there. A lot of things going on. A lot of news happening, and a lot of things that have shaken up some things this past weekend, and we have a lot to talk about. So, Jamie, what are we talking about this week?
All right, so we're going to continue looking at different NFL divisions. Today we'll be checking out the AFC East and just kind of break down what each team is doing and who's got a chance to win the division, wild card spots, and the like. And then we've got a big matchup in college football: Clemson versus Notre Dame. We'll look at how the Tigers can possibly pull this out without Trevor Lawrence. And then we'll look at our likes and dislikes of the weekend and preview some matchups for this upcoming weekend. So with that, the AFC East, this is I think this is it's a stronger division than what we looked at last week. You got the Bills at 6-2. You got the Dolphins at 4-3. And you got the Patriots at 2-5, and then the Jets at 0-8. This is a post Tom Brady division now. Like I'm still not used to seeing the Patriots there at third. It's crazy to even see them at 2-5. I mean, what do you? What is this like breaking down this division, Caleb? Like, I mean, what do you think overall?
Yeah, and so we're talking about Buffalo, Miami, New England, and the Jets in
Yes.
this division. To me, the strongest team and the clear strongest team with the same record as Buffalo.
Mm,
And look, Buffalo is a lot better of a team than even they were last year.
yeah.
Stephon Diggs has, I think, played a big instrument on their offense. It's looking like it's kind of paid out to get him on that team. As always, if you have a threat, that opens up other guys, and I think Stephon
Mm,
Diggs, I think average numbers for him, but you think about people who have to take him into consideration. He's a guy that you've always had to double, that you've always had to make sure that you're defensive wise, that you're always kind of looking in that direction for Stephon Diggs. What's interesting about that as well, he is actually, with that, he is the top wide receiver in the AFC East as well. And so, yeah, Buffalo is definitely the clear and strong favorite for me in that division, because you look at that whole team as a whole, just with the way that Josh Allen has played, the defensive solid, just playing some great team football, and that's what has them at 6-2. They are definitely, in my opinion, I know they're kind of power ranked all over the place. But talking AFC wise, to me they're right along And then I don't hesitate at all to say that they're definitely top five team
Yeah.
in the whole AFC.
Yeah.
And that's just based on how strong they are on the offensive side and defensive side. And so that's my. I got some other things, but what have your thoughts been so far about Buffalo, Jamie?
Buffalo, I think they've underachieved. I mean, they're sitting good with a 6-2 record, and one of those losses with the Chiefs. So, I mean that's uh, you you're obviously not at the Kansas City's level when it comes to the AFC, but and I can't tell you who that other loss is, but it I think yeah, I mean I think they're the odds-on favorite to win that division. Clearly, I think Miami might be able to make a run for a wild card spot, but um, they're I would say the best team in the division, and yeah, I wouldn't put them outside the top five in the AFC. I think Josh Allen is a good quarterback, underrated. He's starting to make a name for himself in a lot of ways, and I think since getting Stephon Diggs, I think that has definitely given them the firepower. Allen's big thing is he has to stay consistent. He makes a lot of. He's got a cannon for an arm, but he makes a lot of passes that just he overthrows his receivers. We saw that in the Kansas City game, and he kind of makes a lot of dumb errors. But I think as he develops, I think he's gonna be one of the top young quarterbacks in the NFL. Definitely, I would say easily the best in that division right now. It's I kind of just want to just talk about New England real quick. It's still just mind boggling to me like that they're 2-5. Like this isn't overall ranking for the AFC East is number 6, but the did I just don't get like how New England's that bad. They still have a good defense. They're still they have Cam Newton. He hasn't been playing his best football, but that's a former MVP. And they still have Belichick. So it's still just crazy to me that they've only won 2 games this year. You know? And
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
it's just it's a weird that's just a weird team because they're definitely underachieving. But this is a really good division. I think you've got 2 playoff teams that are gonna two teams in this division will be in the playoffs. Um, they've got a lot of young players. We're not even talking about Tua right now. Who made his first start for Miami. Um, that's gonna be a good team going forward. Um, it's just I feel like a lot of the teams in this division underachieve. They could be better than what their records suggest, and that's even going as far as the Jets. I think the Jets are a better team than their record. Obviously they're probably the worst team in the NFL right now, but I think that's just more along the lines of who their head coach is. I think Sam Darnold is a good quarterback. He just needs better coaching and better weapons. But this is definitely a really, really fun division. They lot of I think there's going to be a lot of good players that are going to step up in this division. It's very competitive. It's going to be competitive down to week 17, and it's going to be interesting to as this division goes forward. Just who kind of rises to the top for me.
Yeah, and apparently Jay has also had some opinions about the AFC East as well. Um, she's pretty happy right now, pretty content.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, except till now, she's questioning that. Um, yeah. Uh, I think what you said about Miami is interesting. You know, what also we have to keep an account in for this year is that that we'll have that 17 playoff.
Yes.
And that is the way I could see them sneaking in. It's going to be
Hmm.
pretty close. Uh, so I'm not going to put in my say whether or not that I think they're a playoff. They definitely have the team, and I think it was impressive their win that they had against the Rams,
Hmm.
because their defense has gotten incredibly much better. And you talk about McVay and that offense at LA, and so that was impressive to see
Hmm.
them do that. And I think they are, like you said, contenders. I heard a lot that people weren't a huge fan of Tua's first outing. It was very average. He very much kind of managed
Yeah.
that. But listen, I mean,
Hmm.
you're not gonna have, I mean, for each player is gonna react different to their first game. He still had a great game because they
Yeah.
won, and he didn't really turn over the ball. And I think he'll just keep increasing. He definitely had some good throws here and there. Uh, you know, but what's most impressive about Miami, I think, is as they're like we talked about with Buffalo as a team as a whole, they're really starting to buy into their system into both places and really starting to buy into their head coaches and organizations. So I think that's
Hmm.
what's kind of turning around the Buffalo and Miami train. New
Hmm.
England is kind of surprising, but you look at who they have, and I know Belichick made this statement earlier. He's like, "This is what we expected," and I was like, you still have to prepare in a world where you won't have Tom Brady, and
Yeah.
maybe they've been looking at this for a long time because, I mean, honestly, the Patriots, I mean, the only reason that they have kind of succeeded and moved forward is because of Tom Brady. But you look at the other spots that there is a deep decline.
Yeah.
Besides some of their pieces that they have on defense. But you look at that offense. I mean, there is no weapon on that offense that really scares you.
Yeah.
And even Cam at this point, Cam's been up and down, and at least for me, I was kind of expecting that sometime there would be some sort of fallout because, unfortunately, that's kind of Cam's mo at this point in his
Hmm.
career is he'll have these amazing games that you think he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and then there's this deep fall off effect. And so I don't know if it's because teams are starting to figure out what New England is doing,
Yeah.
what all that entails. But Cam was carrying this team earlier, and I think teams are starting to figure out how to scheme against this New England team. So it's gonna be
Hmm.
interesting to see New England as we may consider them at rebuild mode. It's the weirdest thing
Hmm.
to think at 2-5. But this division, just with your components, you don't have any trust. To me, still in any teams in the AFC West, I think, like I said, the strongest would be the Bills. So
Hmm.
you could see what New England does simply in the East to see what they can build from this season.
Yeah.
My last thoughts about the Jets is the Jets are on wholesale right now, but they've been on
Hmm.
wholesale for years now.
Yeah.
It's like every 2 years they put their players up on wholesale.
Hmm.
And I'm drawing a blank on his name, but the Steelers traded a fifth round pick to get a really good linebacker from the Jets,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
one that they needed after Devin Bush was placed on IR with his injury. It's going to be a huge asset to this defense that's already been great, but you add him on at linebacker, and I think you improve your run defense dramatically.
Yeah.
And we're gonna need that. I mean, the Steelers are gonna need that. I said we. The Steelers are
Hmm.
gonna need that based on the way Josh Dobbins ran over the field against this defense that had stopped running backs like Derrick Henry. And
Yeah.
so the Jets are on wholesale. I don't know the plan for the New York. It's kind of like with Houston. I've kind of lost any idea of what they're thinking. I think
Yeah.
I would say all their accusations have been decent. I'm not
Mhm.
bought into the Sam Darnold. I don't think they are, and so I think they're waiting to pick up Trevor Lawrence in the draft.
Yeah. Could you see New England possibly like just kind of not really tanking, because I don't feel like that's in their um
Yeah,
in their mindset as an organization is tanking, because they haven't had to do that in years. But could you see New England possibly getting in a position to be able to grab Trevor Lawrence?
I think they're already in position, and you don't necessarily have to tank for that because of
Mm.
they already have with my understanding. They New England is very smart in the way that they acquire draft picks and save them.
Yeah.
And I would have to double check. And I know they've been sitting on some number ones for a long time. I don't know if they still are, but it seems like they
Yeah.
were kind of acquiring these picks. I don't know if that still is the case. We would have to double check on that, but I don't think you necessarily have to tank. It more depends on if the Jets think that Sam Darnold is their guy or not. And if he
Yeah.
isn't, are they going to trade out of that first spot? And there I could see, the quote unquote tank for Sam Darnold, and their number one pick would become very valuable at that point because they may be picking in the top five,
Yeah.
along with some other number ones, and then they couldn't get into that number one spot. I have a hard time believing that the New England Patriots can only pull out 2 wins this year.
Yeah.
But I had a hard time believing, not to bring up some bad memories, but the time when they won the Super Bowl and won the AFC Championship against the Chiefs. I had a hard
Yeah.
time believing that team ended up winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You kind of look at their pieces, and they didn't really have much, but the team as a whole, the way that they came back. But here's the thing, I say that, but Tom Brady is gone, and it's a
Yeah.
huge void, and it's a huge void that we have been seeing.
Hmm.
And unlike a lot of some people have been, talked about that if you take Tom Brady out of the Buccaneers, that other quarterbacks could be doing what he's doing. I think there are some talks, that you could say some of that, but you can never, he's still, it's amazing some of the throws that Tom is being able to throw at his age, but you can't take away his experience, and some of the
Yeah.
throws that he makes and is able to make is just based on experience with his
Yeah.
guys. So so yeah, I think New England has a possibility to. I don't think you would have to tank in order to get Trevor. I think they would maybe have enough assets if the Jets think that Sam Darnold is their guy. I don't think they do because that's why they're already losing their assets. I think they're all in for Trevor Lawrence, and it's at this point it's kind of hard to blame them
Yeah.
because Sam Darnold has been injured off and on, just shown to be average. There's nothing elite to me that I have seen with Sam Darnold. It's not doesn't make him a bad player. Doesn't mean that he could never win with this team. But when you already have a weak team and you have a chance to where I think Trevor Lawrence will be elite, and it will be one of those guys alongside Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Lamar, and we're going to put. I mean, that's what I think Trevor Lawrence will be. And so if you have an opportunity to get a guy like that, then you trade Sam Darnold. You make him another asset you trade away.
Well, so all right, just to continue with this division and the Jets, if you're in a position, or if you're Trevor Lawrence and you see that the Jets and the mess that they are, and this also depends on Gase is gone. I'm surprised that he wasn't fired on Monday after that Chiefs game, but Gase, it depends on who they bring in to be the head coach. But if you're Trevor Lawrence and you look at this team, depending on who the head coach is they bring in, do you stay at Clemson for another year, or do you join this team and possibly get hurt on this squad? I mean, like what do you think Trevor is going through Trevor Lawrence's head right now?
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, obviously, when you're a high draft pick, I mean, you look at Joe Burrow, in the situation he's in.
Mm,
Obviously, you wouldn't want that to be your situation. You'd obviously want a better team to trade up into that. But look, if you have a chance to be the number one draft pick, you've got to go.
yeah,
Plain and simple. Because look, he's at a college level. There's nothing else Trevor Lawrence has to prove.
yeah,
I mean, what win one more if they win a champion. I mean, he's already won a championship, already won
mm,
two championships. So I mean, what
yeah,
else? What else does he have to do? So I mean, I have no doubt. And if the yeah, and anybody advising him shouldn't, it should be Trevor Lawrence. You need to go.
yeah,
So, but and that's the conversation. Tua had that same thing, and I would say Tua had a stronger reason actually come back to college if we're bringing this scenario up because this was a real thing. Tua didn't really know, and people were at he made it his decision really wasn't final after the season. He was still trying to decide if he would come back for another year or leave. I'm pretty
yeah,
because it wasn't sure that he would be a top five. I'm pretty, I'm thankful for Tua's sake, that he did end up leaving because I think that was a better choice for him. And
yeah,
I would say the same thing for Trevor Lawrence. Even if you go to the Jets, I mean, you're still in the NFL. It's and it's an opportunity if the team is really trading for assets, to do kind of what Miami did. I mean, Miami traded and got some line help. And that's
yeah,
maybe what the Jets need to do is trade and get some line help and protect your asset. And that's the biggest thing that we've learned from Andrew Luck, and we've talked about this before in the past, is more teams need to look at that. They need to, if you are going to draft a quarterback with your number one pick, you better be willing to invest strongly in your line to protect that asset, or you're going to be another Indianapolis.
yeah,
And Andrew Luck retiring when he did is an
mm,
absolute travesty. It really
yeah,
was. I mean,
yeah.
you think about, and he had no line, and that was the issue. He had no line help.
Yeah.
Absolute travesty that
He
Andrew
was
Luck
taking
retired.
beatings,
Yeah,
and but he was still able to win with that team there for a couple of years. He was still
yeah.
able to win with them,
What he
won a
did,
playoff game, and but
what he did was incredible. And if
yeah,
you put him, you think about you put him, he wins a Super Bowl if you give him the same weapons and opportunities you put Peyton in.
yeah,
For sure. There's no
hmm,
doubt in my mind. You look at some of the wins that Andrew Luck had were incredible. I mean,
yeah,
especially, you look at the huge playoffs moments he had, and so that's why I said Indianapolis truly messed up Andrew Luck.
yeah,
And in all sense of the words, all
yeah,
all sense of it, they literally messed up Andrew Luck's career. And so
yeah,
Miami smartly looked at that and said, "Hey, we aren't going to be good. We're going to get assets and we're going to protect Tua. If
yeah,
Tua is our guy and we already know he's fragile, we've got to protect this guy."
yeah,
And so
yeah.
the Jets are going to have to do the same. If you're going to get Trevor Lawrence, you've
The
got to
rest of your draft picks need to be offensive linemen.
yeah.
Like
I mean,
you
for
just
real.
gotta go heavy offense.
And it's not to say, and I think I think even the past, I'd have to look at the draft picks. I think they were starting to work on that line because each
Yeah,
NFL team's starting to realize that. I mean,
yeah,
uh, I think Andrew Luck retiring kind of woke up the whole league and because for a time there, I really felt like we had a couple years. There was about there's about a 5 year dry spell where you didn't have offensive linemen go in the first round. Not to say that that's bad or anything, and maybe there was a surplus. I'm not sure, but now
mhm,
you're starting to see these linemen being projected way higher, just
yeah,
because you're starting to see these quarterbacks start to retire and start to leave. Part of what I call the guys that we grew up watching like in high school and all that, about done, and so you've
Hmm.
got to protect these new guys coming in. The only guys kind of left are Tom and Big Ben.
Hmm.
Try to think. I think maybe the rest.
Rivers,
Yeah, and Rivers may be the last one.
Breeze.
Yeah, Breeze. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think there are a lot of teams that are going to look at what Miami did and try to think through that same process. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I, I don't know what else the Jets are doing except for tanking. And that's where
Yeah.
I go back to I really want us to relook at this draft because I don't believe an organization should tank for players.
Yeah.
And that's what I clearly think the Jets are doing. And that's why I'm kind of a big fan of the NBA's lottery pick. And
Yes.
you know, because that doesn't guarantee that you will have the first pick. And I'm not necessarily saying that we should do lottery, but it's a good system to say
Hmm.
5 teams are in the mix instead of being like New York Jets. If you don't win a game, you'll get Trevor Lawrence. They'll be like,
Yeah.
cool, that's
Yeah.
all right. We're in a pandemic anyways. We can't have fans. Don't
Yeah.
win a game. It's all good. We'll have Trevor Lawrence. We'll have better.
Yeah.
No team should be rewarded. And I know this is a argument. Should be. This is what the NFL should fix. But people talk about playoffs rules. The draft is what
Hmm.
the NFL needs to fix, in my opinion.
Yeah. I would
So,
agree.
but the AFC East as a whole, Buffalo's a strong team, top 5 team in the AFC East. The other team that they lost to was a like a they got a beatdown was against the
Hmm.
Titans. They got destroyed against the Titans. So yeah, it's the Chiefs and the
Yeah.
Titans and another 2 top teams in the AFC. So,
Yeah.
but I do. I mean, you know, uh, if we started naming off matchups, I would choose, especially in the AFC, choose Buffalo a lot of the times. So,
Yeah.
next up, talking about Clemson and Trevor Lawrence. That's our next conversation, kind of.
Yeah.
Once again, we got Clemson and Notre Dame for this week. Jamie, what are your thoughts about this matchup?
This is an intriguing matchup because I've always, and I'm pretty sure I've said it on this show, I've always felt like Notre Dame are just pretenders. Um, I feel like they get really high up in the ranks and then they get smacked by a better team and then they just drop in the ranks. They do it. It feels like every year Notre Dame's always up there and then they get smacked. This matchup's interesting because Trevor Lawrence ain't gonna be playing in it. He's still on COVID protocols. And so we're gonna get to find out, I think, a lot about the this Clemson team, this number one team in the nation. We're gonna find out a lot about them. ESPN still has them as a 65.8 matchup predictor. So 65.8 chance to win, giving Notre Dame 34.2. I mean, and a lot of that, I think that would be a lot higher if Trevor was playing. But we're gonna find out about this backup. I can't think of his name. Um, uh, yeah, I can't think of his name, but we're gonna find out a lot about this backup quarterback that they've got, and then their run game. How is Atini gonna be able to run with without Trevor Lawrence still holding on to the ball, and this defense, how are they going to play against Notre Dame? And I think it's because normally if Trevor was playing in this game, I don't think we'd be talking about it because I think it would be, overall just Clemson's going to win. But I think, this is something that it's worth talking about now because, Notre Dame without Trevor Lawrence has a chance. And maybe Notre Dame has a chance to actually prove me wrong and stay in the top 5 instead of getting to that point and then dropping like they always do. And it's not saying Notre Dame's a bad team because they're not. They're 6-0 and or yeah, they're 6-0 and played some good football. It's just I've always just felt they were pretenders, but this is, I think, a good opportunity for them to um, prove that they aren't, and prove that they deserve to be in the top five. And I think this is going to be a good matchup. This is definitely going to be something worth watching, for me at least. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's what makes it interesting is not having Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, and the way that Clemson struggled that first half against Boston College,
Mm-hmm.
I I honestly would be shocked if because look, they struggled in the first half. They got what I was surprised because they really, I mean, you look at their first half, they played extremely poor against Boston
Mm-hmm.
College, but the way that they came back in that second half, uh, I commend Clemson for getting their guys around because it was a huge difference. And
Yeah.
they, and the whole time it wasn't, and I'm gonna butcher his name, but DJ Ugalali. It's like that Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
Tua. So DJ, we're gonna go with DJ, just like we
DJ.
did with Tua.
Yep.
We're gonna go ukulele, DJ ukulele. Uh, so we're just gonna go with DJ. Uh, Listen, uh, DJ brought the team back. He had a pretty good first half. You think about all the circumstance. What I love is the fact is they didn't they stuck with their protocol. So DJ knows both last week and has another week of preparation, knowing hey you are going to start, and that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Especially you need to have that mindset going in and that preparation going into Notre Dame. But look, neither team has really played anyone of significance to say I think one team has an edge. You know,
Yeah.
I yeah, I would say uh, I agree with you. I think Notre Dame is always ranked super high. You know, I I I don't think it'll be close. I think it may be a two touchdown game for Clemson.
Mm.
It makes it very interesting, like we've been saying over and over again, because Trevor Lawrence won't be there. But you
Mm.
look, like I said, the second half they dominated Boston College. They woke up, played against them, and I don't think that you're going to see that against Notre Dame where they'll have a down half. They'll be ready to go
Yeah.
on both sides, and so it was close. But you've got to have these, each champion, if you're going to the championship, which we think Clemson will probably be there at the end, are going to have these close games. You look
Yeah.
at Ole Miss and Alabama. They
Mm-hmm.
had a scare in that, but it's impressive to me to see teams that each of these teams are going to give Clemson or Notre Dame their best shot, and they're still even to dominate. So close wins. I know a lot of people look at that as saying a team is vulnerable, but I say
Mm.
it's more impressive because it just shows you the mindset of that team. And Clemson had a totally different mindset going into that second half. I agree with you. I don't see what makes Notre Dame so much special this year, even compared to last year. For
Yeah.
us to say that, it's just that the Big Ten just hasn't been playing. I think that's why they get this high rank at number 4, but they just haven't played anybody,
Yeah.
and neither really has Clemson. I mean, Clemson at least had Miami.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been their strongest, but Notre Dame has this will be their first top 25 game that they've played this
Yeah.
season. So uh,
Notre Dame's last 5 games is Georgia Tech, Pitt, Louisville, Florida State, and USF.
yeah, and
And then Clemson's is Boston College, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, Miami, and Virginia.
whatever you may look at it, programs like Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, whether it's good or bad for college football, maybe another discussion. But when you've got teams like that, and there's so much talent that you have to overcome, not just at the quarterback position, at every
Mm.
position. And DJ, look, he was a top recruit, and DJ is going to be probably the future, and he looks pretty good at quarterback. So it's going to be a good opportunity to prepare for next year with him at the helm. So, yeah. So I still think heavy, and I know a lot of people are thinking heavy Notre Dame favorites in this game, but I'm until I see an SEC caliber team go down like Clemson. Um, I'm going Clemson until I see that happen. Because
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
yeah,
I think if Notre Dame plays at its top form, I think they could they could squeak out a win. Um, but you also don't want to say that Clemson's only where they are because of Trevor Lawrence. And I think
oh
the
yeah,
rest of this
yeah,
team can rally. You still have one of the top running backs in the NCAA. Um, I think the rest of this team is going to rally and they're going to beat Notre Dame fairly well. It's just going to be interesting. I think this I won't give them a 2 touchdown lead. In this, I think it's going to come down to 3. But yeah, I think Notre Dame can make a game out of it. It's just if Clemson keeps rolling like they can and keep being the powerhouse that they are, I'm it could get out of hand. But I
yeah.
think Notre Dame will keep it at least tight. But
Well,
you
college
know,
football, unlike we've talked about, the NFL is really based on what your quarterback is able to do. College
yeah,
football is based on what your trench is able to do.
yeah,
And I go back to programs like an Ohio State, Clemson, or Alabama. It's really one there. And
yeah,
Clemson offensive line and defensive, especially defensive line, is has the top players in those positions. And so, and that's what happens when you face teams. You think about over the years why Notre Dame loses to teams like these. And I'm trying to remember. Believe um, last year Notre Dame, um, almost their impressive almost win came against Georgia.
yeah.
When they lost 17-23. So I mean, Notre Dame has better pieces in that area than they
Hmm.
have had in the past. Because if you go back and look at the national championship between Alabama and Notre Dame hadn't faced the athleticism in uh, a defensive front and an offensive front. I mean, that's why they got blown out in that national
Yeah,
championship. And so that's why once I'll have to see it to believe it type thing for Notre
yeah,
Dame, And so
yeah,
that's why I'm like, it's Clemson because they've
yeah,
been stronger in that area for a few years now. So,
yeah.
and I just don't think that they can match that size that Clemson has. All right, so last thing, what were the best and worst things that we saw for this week? And I don't know if you're like me, Jamie. I mean, it was a little. This week was a little tricky. This week is a
Yeah.
little tricky for me. And so I'm probably gonna do some homer picks. For me.
It's all right. I've done that a lot.
Yeah. So I think the best thing that I saw this week was probably I was impressed with Alabama 0 that they put up against Mississippi State. You look
Yeah.
at week 1, uh, and it's been strange kind of bleed up to this week for Mississippi State, but still, week 1 Mississippi State claims goes out, blows, they beat, they didn't blow out LSU, but they beat them
Yeah.
with a huge offensive performance. Next week they said that they want the Chiefs or San Francisco, and it's been all downhill from there.
Yeah.
So So I mean, Mississippi State has shown that they had offensive power, but they completely. I was surprised at how they completely shut down Mississippi State because that's where Alabama had been very. It was huge question mark. Was their defense, and especially that, and we had talked about their defensive backfield, but against a throwing team, against a get in the gun and fire type team, and a vertical spread against that Mississippi State has, that pro vertical offense. They put a 0 up, and the DBs played extremely well. Once again, I do know it was Mississippi State, so I'm not going to get super excited. But anytime I see a 0 for any college team, and especially, once again, Alabama, I get excited about. So I really liked Alabama's defense this week. It really helps them moving into the LSU game, not this week, but November 14th. What was the best thing you saw this week?
Man, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Best thing I saw. It wasn't really the best thing, but Atlanta. I'm so happy. I'm so happy they won. They won. It wasn't the best game ever. It wasn't the best statistics ever, but they won. And this was another just 1 week
figured out how to do
it. They held on to the lead. Julio played well. He had over 100 yards receiving. Wasn't, like I said, wasn't the best statistical game I've ever seen. But they won. And, this is just 1 week. And I felt like, since I put them on my dislikes so many times, they won, so I'm going to put them on my likes. I'm happy for them. 25-17 against the Panthers. Panthers aren't a bad team. They're rolling into Arrowhead this weekend. So hopefully they'll be dropping 2 in a row. But it was just a good game. Good. Felt good for Atlanta. I see Atlanta. They're going to be a different look. They're going to look way different next year. I think Matt Ryan's going to be gone. I think there's a chance. I think maybe Julio will be gone. It's going to look like a different team next season. But I enjoyed it. It made me smile. And so, yeah, that was the best thing I saw. It wasn't the best thing, but I felt like I've talked so much crap on them that I needed to put them in my likes column for at least this week. I'm sure they'll be in my dislike column next week, but I just, it made me happy to see them win and be able to actually hold on to a lead for once this season. So yeah, that's what I had.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do it twice this season so far that I've been on LSU. The worst thing I saw was LSU once again. Their entire team, not only their defense, but their offense, losing to Auburn 48-11. I've picked on them against losing to Mizzou. I picked on them losing because how can you have the best college football season ever? And some of it explains it. I mean, I know that they lost a ton in the draft, but as a program as a whole, what is going on? Because the issue is that they still have talent. They are a very talented LSU team. So let's get that out of the way. Is it that they have players. They may not have a quarterback. They may not have the best quarterback like a Joe Burrow, but they have, especially on defense, looking at Bo Pelini, calling him out a little bit. The coverages that they drop is horrendous, especially in the Mizzou game. They are wide open. And you're telling me Bo Nix and the Auburn Tigers are that good against the LSU Tigers? It boggles my mind how poor this defense is playing.
Yeah.
I say this very, softly because Alabama's next matchup is LSU, and so I don't give any win until it happens for Alabama. So, but it's it's probably the worst season that I've seen a national championship team. They've won the national championship and have played this poorly their next year. They are 2-3. Boggles my. They went undefeated last year, and once again, and been called the best college football team to have ever won a national championship. That is.
I
what
didn't
they
hear
were
that. I would
yes. They
say,
said that they had the best college football season out of any championship team. And I somewhat agree with them. I do.
I think that 01 Hurricanes team would probably wipe the floor up with these guys.
But but they're talking about awards and just as a whole compilation of the team.
Yeah.
Having a Heisman winner, I think they had a couple on defense.
That, but
that's a whole. I mean, awards based, not talent based when you go into the NFL. Because overall, you could go back and say, it was maybe that Miami team. But just based on a college team's performance, just the way that they beat teams, the way that their offense and defense performed, beating Alabama. That's been the mark. Is nowadays if you beat Alabama, you can keep your job. So that is why a lot of people were saying it was the best college football team ever. So the worst is just still LSU because it just boggles my mind that they've got talent that they should have had. I mean, you think about recruiting in the SEC, especially for a team like LSU, and Ed Orgeron. Ed Orgeron is known for his recruiting, so I can't believe it's just not having the talent. It may not be having the right talent. That's a big difference. It's a huge difference.
See, LSU kind of I don't know. It's definitely a mystery, but where do you think it's going wrong? Is it the talent? Is it Ed? Like, what did he do prior to this? Like, he was at Mississippi State as the head coach for a little bit, and then it kind of not Mississippi State. He went to Ole Miss as the head coach, and they didn't really do anything there. So, like,
his biggest thing is he's always been a great recruiter, because he was on those good USC. He was on Pete Carroll's staff, and so getting guys Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush. He was a part of all that. So recruiting was his big thing, and it's still a huge thing. And Ole Miss just couldn't ever make it happen. And I think he may have had some allegations. I don't know, some weird things happen at Ole Miss as well. So it was a very different path that got him the LSU job. But what's interesting is they got the quarterback that they always had needed. Quarterback had always been a huge reason why they couldn't get over the top in a national championship type level, was because they never had good quarterback play until Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow was still suspect because the prior season we didn't see much, and then Joe Burrow just worked it and transformed his entire career the way he played last season. So it had always been an LSU. If you have a quarterback, we can go win ourselves a national championship, and it had always been like that. Now so you got your quarterback. I mean, is it because of COVID? Is it because some other things, But the way that this team has coached and it's just a whole different feel to this LSU team. So, it just, I want to never say that that season they won the championship was a fluke, because they were extremely good. What I will say is, it's just never would have expected them not to compete. Like sometimes I just feel like they don't compete. especially that Mizzou game. Like, it was just they had no, didn't compete, but maybe they just weren't coached well. They weren't in the right scheme, but yeah, it kind of once again baffles my mind to see how much they struggled. And look, I mean, it kind of didn't seem that way when the game first started because, like, in the first quarter, it was 0-0. So we thought maybe kind of, especially LSU had kind of turned that around. But in that second quarter and third quarter, Auburn just blew up
Yeah.
everything. I mean, they scored 21 points in the second quarter and in the third quarter. So they just started blowing them away at that point.
Yeah.
And so, but, I know but even to me, Auburn's been down this year. And so to lose in that way to them was surprising.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a weird things going on at LSU. So that's why I picked them for my worst again this time around.
My worst is Tennessee. The Tennessee Titans. They lost to the Cincinnati Bengals 31-20. Tennessee's one of the top teams in the AFC. They were in the AFC Championship last year. We're up 10 twice against Kansas City and lost. And it wasn't. As I'm looking at the numbers, it wasn't a bad statistical game. Tannehill went 233, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Derrick Henry, 112 yards, 1 touchdown. Joe Burrow had a good game, 249, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And then their running game, was all right. But for Tennessee, you're one of the top teams in the AFC. This is a team that you put away. You put them away, you don't look back. It's not saying that Cincinnati's necessarily a bad team. They're a young team, and they're still growing. They've got, I believe, their future at quarterback who's still figuring it out, and he's still growing. But as for the Titans, you have a team that can put this team away. There's no reason you lose this game. You don't. And every NFL team loses unless you're the Steelers, apparently. Every NFL team loses a game that they're supposed to win, and for their sake, I hope this is it. They're sitting at 5-2, 2-1 away. So their 2 losses, Tennessee's 2 losses, is Cincinnati and Buffalo, right? So, yeah, both those games should have been games they won, but this is definitely one they should have won.
Yeah, they've also their second loss is the Steelers.
Oh yeah, that's right. Um, you know, Steelers. That's Steelers are playing good football right now.
Yeah,
There's not very many teams
the
that can beat them.
The Steelers, they were down and almost came back and won.
Okay.
In that matchup, and that's the thing with Tennessee for me is I feel like for me, the Steelers were kind of in that range, but I'm getting a little bit more confident with the Steelers. But the Tennessee are kind of suspect still to me because I think they could. I don't think if they faced like Buffalo, we keep bringing Buffalo. I don't think if they face them again in a playoff type, in a playoff game, not in, it'll be a different outcome, and Buffalo would have a good chance of winning. And so I'm not 100% sold on Tannehill and the Titans, because if they can't get Henry running, they struggle a lot. And you saw that in the Steelers game, but credit to Tannehill because he really did almost bring them to a comeback against the Steelers. But the Titans, I don't. They're a good team, but I don't know where they're at. The other thing I was gonna mention is the other best thing I was gonna mention was Joe Burrow.
Yes.
Joe Burrow has totally exceeded my expectations of him because I thought because of just how talented LSU was last year that maybe that's why he was putting up those numbers. But man, in the 2 years, he's a completely different player. And
Yeah.
Cincinnati should be totally sold out as he's their guy. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I watch him play, and he's got absolutely nothing out there except maybe. I mean, if AJ Green is your best player at his age, and old AJ Green is your best player that you've got, and then Joe Burrow is still. I mean, Joe Burrow has been impressive since game one. I mean,
Yeah.
truly has, and he's definitely my rookie of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And Cincinnati needs to be all bought in on Joe Burrow because the way he's been playing, I've got, you know, the most it'll be once again, it'll be Cincinnati, the Ravens, and the Steelers, and the Browns are just there in our conference, with the way
Yeah.
that, the way that the AFC North is going. But man, he's been, honestly, I'm not saying he's Patrick Mahomes, but the way that he's come out and impressed me is on that same like level,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Because I
Yeah.
mean, he is the reason that team is winning. Because
Mm-hmm.
if they did not have Joe Burrow, this team would be over.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt in my mind. And so, a big credit to Joe Burrow, and hopefully Cincinnati can figure out a way to build around him. But it is Cincinnati. But
Yeah.
yeah, the Titans, yeah, they've got a lot of question marks in my book. Especially like I said, if they can't get their run game going, they kind of get in trouble.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah. It's one they should have won. They didn't. Now you just gotta keep going. But yeah, that's all I got, man.
Yeah, a couple of another big matchup in college football, just to be watching out for is Georgia versus Florida. We'll see if Georgia is able to have any type of offense because Kentucky kind of shut them down.
Yeah.
And so we'll be, if Florida's able to do the same thing. Georgia looks like they're struggling. Somebody was making fun or making a joke that Alabama broke their team. I don't know if necessarily, but Georgia. I mean, if they're meant to be this top four team, they have a big opportunity to show that against Gator and the Kyle Trask, and so Kyle Trask is good. They've got some good players around him, so this is going to
Yeah.
be a huge matchup for Georgia and for Florida, to be honest with you. But I think this is the bigger, test, to see where Georgia is at. So definitely one to watch out. Any in the NFL that you know of, Jamie, to kind of watch out
Um,
for?
Sunday Night Football. You got the rematch. Saints Bucks.
Yeah,
The Saints beat Tom Brady the first week one pretty easy. Um, there wasn't much competition, especially what we thought was going to happen. But the Bucks are rolling, and I think the Saints have kind of declined a little bit in the last couple weeks. So I think this is one to watch. Definitely a lot of playoff
yeah,
and division implications in this one. So definitely tune in for Sunday Night Football on NBC.
yeah.
But
I'm kind of I don't know. I'm intrigued somewhat with the Seahawks Bills matchup. I think that could also
yeah,
be a good game because I know
hmm
we've been talking about the Bills once again have an opportunity to see where their team is at against the MVP right now, Russell Wilson.
yeah,
And so in my book, I'd give it to Russell at this point. So yeah, so I think for me that's another matchup that I'm interested to see how that outcome will be.
yeah,
Yeah, and so we got Packers and 49ers tonight.
yeah.
And seeing what that game will be like. Anyways,
Keep keep a one more. Keep an eye on the Dolphins and the Cardinals with
yeah,
Tua. See his growth. From his first start, and then the Cardinals. I think are. We'll get into that once we go over the NFC West and our
right.
division thing. But I think the Cardinals are a good team. Definitely worthy of that top spot in the NFC West. But I'm going to be interested to see Kyler versus Tua. I think these are two young quarterbacks that are gonna definitely be top quarterbacks in this league in a couple years, and so I think that's one worth watching for me. But that's all I got.
Yep. That's all I got to you guys. You guys have a wonderful week. As always, let us know what you're thinking of the show. Leave us comments on Facebook. Check us out. Let us know what you're thinking. Do you agree with anything about what we said? What was your worst and best thing that you guys saw this week? So, love to hear from y'all. So, you guys have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week.